This is case of the day, and today is the 104th case titled Raining DPOs or the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I really don't have the energy right now to go and check my pronunciation. I could just call it the BM phenomenon. But I can't stress enough how I am learning on a daily, regular basis while I'm doing these posts. And while I was aware of the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, it literally got reinforced today. So I put this post up a couple of days ago, and it was all about DPO and CIOP because of the new guidelines that have laid a little stress on them. And this post is free, and you can at least for the time being, and there's a lot more detail there. But basically, the new guidelines tell you that there's metaplastic bone formation. It may be idiopathic or secondary, and it corresponds histologically to cicatricial organizing pneumonia. So that's a new term, and it DPO can be dendriform or nodular, idiopathic or secondary, and dendriforms more likely in idiopathic and nodular more likely in secondary. But it's rare. So after I was looking at that post, we started searching in our archives. We found about 23 odd cases since 2019, three primary. We're planning to write it up. So we've been talking about it within our group practice, and it's been there in our minds. And so this morning was weird. We first saw the 62 years old with a fibrosing ILD, which is either probable UIP, IPF, or fibrotic NSIP. First, presented I think 5 months ago. So there are two CTs, but pretty much everything's the same. You can see the traction bronchiectasis, reticular opacity, subpleural basal predominance. And then when we looked at it in more detail and put on the bone windows, you can see extensive subpleural dendriform and nodular DPO. But this is in the setting of fibrosing ILD, so it's a secondary mixed dendriform and nodular DPO. Then an hour later, we were looking at another patient, 37 years old. He'd come with a cavity in 2019 in the right upper lobe, which has since regressed, but with a new cavity in the left upper lobe. But you can see these curvilinear reticular opacities in the lower lobes. And clearly, this is abnormal. And again, when we put on the bone windows, you can see that it's classic dendriform DPO. And since there is no underlying condition, this is idiopathic dendriform diffuse pulmonary ossification, and it had progressed from 2019. So this is our first progressive DPO. Most of the times it remains static. And this is the pattern that you get with cicatricial organizing pneumonia. So if you look at the guidelines, there's this whole chart that they've given. CIOP is not actually an alveolar filling disorder. It's the sequelae of a prior insult, most likely. And it's a new entity that we're coming to terms with. But if you see dendriform ossification, it means that there's underlying CIOP. Another hour later, we had another 69-year-old man. This is a UIP IPF, progressive but slow progressive since 2014. So it's already 9 years, and it's just gone from here to here. And we put on the bone windows and we looked at these nodular ossific foci, more than 10, and highly suggestive, therefore, of nodular secondary DPO. And when it rains, it pours ossific foci, 3 in a day, 23 in, so let's say 2019 to 2025, 6 years, and then 3 in a day. So is that an increase, or are we just recognizing more because we're more aware now? Were we then missing DPOs? And that actually brings us to the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, which basically is all about frequency illusion, selective attention, and if you have time, you should read up more about this, and confirmation bias, etc. And basically, I asked Claude to put all this together, and of course, it got the sequence wrong here. But it is, I was writing about DPO, then we were talking about DPO, then we were collecting cases to write it up. And then suddenly we're seeing 3 cases in one day. It's probably because we're just starting to understand it better, and then we're finding it everywhere. And just because we're more aware of a condition and suddenly start seeing it everywhere doesn't mean that the incidence and prevalence have increased, but it could mean that we were not recognizing it earlier, perhaps because we weren't just aware. So all of those of you who see this and are reading CTs, why don't you put on your bone windows for 10 seconds and see if you're seeing more DPOs, simply because now you're looking for it, and see if now that you've heard this and you're aware of DPO, whether you're going to be the victim of confirmation bias or the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. So that's the seminar, my WhatsApp channel. Thank you so much for viewing this. I hope I've given you some food for thought today.